Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jensen with CCJ 3701, Research Methods in Criminology. So again, I apologize for my voice or any coughing I might do. I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum as I'm still recovering from some illness. But this lesson, we're going to be working on your tables. And I realize some of you have never ever built tables like this before. They're kind of different. By the time you're done, it's going to look like something that can go into a journal article. It's really cool. This starts making your paper look more and more professional. And it's really important for your reader to have it. So just a few preliminaries. I would definitely take some notes during this video to jot down some things to keep track of. I would also make sure that you jot down any questions you may have during the video so you can remember what they are and send them to me when you're done. So I'll go through some kind of common practices in building tables, and then I'll show you some mistakes that I tend to see people make so that you can avoid those. So right now I'm actually in the General Social Survey. You should have your topic chosen, and you should have at least one variable or more representing your independent variable and your dependent variable, as well as a few choices for your control variables. I require a minimum of 3 control variables, but you can certainly have more if you're interested in more things. Keep in mind you need to report on all the variables that you analyze, so you don't want to get too carried away with putting 12 or 15 or 25 variables in there, because you only have so much time to finish this thing, so you want to be practical. But at one point you need to prepare this for your reader. Keep in mind your reader does not have your data. They do not have SPSS, and they know nothing about your variables. That's why we take time in the paper in different sections to describe the data you have, to describe the variables you have, so they get to know it, because all they have is your paper. They know nothing, so we have to put everything in front of them so that they are prepared to receive all the research and analysis you're going to present to them. So, I have some table templates on Canvas that you'll see. One set of templates has to do with descriptive statistics for nominal and ordinal variables. Then I have another set for interval variables. Depending on the kind of measurable information you have inside a variable, you're going to present different kind of statistics on it. Okay, so that's probably the first and most important thing, is after you've identified all the variables you'd like to use for independent, dependent, and controls, make sure you identify the kind of information in there so you know where to put it and which template to use. It's going to be painfully obvious to me if you don't know what kind of variable you have. You don't know if it's a quantity, you don't know if it's a category, and you'll be reporting the wrong kinds of information, and it'll look kind of silly. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. So in the General Social Survey, I'm in SPSS, I wanted to look at feelings about pornography laws. This variable is called porn law, and this is one that I want to use for a variable. So I've already looked at the code book for it, and I'm ready to start running some descriptive statistics. So again, I can go to Analyze, Descriptives, Frequencies. Most of the time, the kind of information you're presenting to the reader to describe your variables is a frequency. So that's the best place to start. I selected porn law, and again, if you need to get those means, medians, and modes, standard deviations, and so forth, click on the statistics option button to the right, and you can ask for those additional pieces of information if you need it. Okay, for this kind of a variable, I really don't, so I'm going to hit cancel. I'll click OK, and I actually have some output here. Feelings about pornography laws. Here are the response choices: illegal to all, illegal under age 18, or legal for everyone. And these are the counts of who responded to what choice and the percent. Here's our missing data. This is all stuff you've seen before, okay? So now I got to take this information and put it in a table. Now the first question I get from students is, come on, Jensen, why can't I just copy and paste this table into my paper? It's got all the stuff in there I need. Yes, it does, but it also has a lot of unnecessary information that's distracting and not helpful to your reader. It could even be confusing to your reader. Besides that, SPSS output is ugly. Okay, you want to present it in a polished, clear manner that they can use. So we're not going to use everything in this output for your table, just some of the pieces. So right now, I know that this variable is ordinal. How do I know that? Because I have these categories, but these categories kind of vary in degree to which something should be legal or illegal. I can kind of rank them as far as how far they go. So I can order and rank them the way an ordinal variable can go. Okay, so I know I'm going to use the table templates for nominal and ordinal variables. So let's take a look at what's in there. Excuse me. To begin, you're going to have a table title. Okay, so most of the time a table title says table 1 or table 2, and you write something like descriptive statistics for whatever is going on inside your variable. Okay, so if somebody has to refer back to your table, they can use the title to find the right one. Then what you'll see is we have kind of a description of the topic of the variable, what it's about, and then indented underneath we have the answer choices that were presented in that variable. Then over here to the far right columns we have number and we have percent. We also have valid n, meaning the total number in the sample that we were working with. It's pretty simple. You just basically list everyone's responses, a summary of the variable, and then you put the percent and number in there. But let's talk about a few hiccups that people run into. So they go, okay, Jensen, I got this output. Which percent do I use? I would use valid percent, okay? And this is why. We have missing data over here of inapplicable, I don't know, and so forth. We're not going to analyze the missing data, so why would you spend time providing it to your reader? It's extra information they don't need. You're going to exclude those cases from the analysis anyway. So do they really need to know how many people said, I don't know? You can't analyze it. So you're not analyzing it. It's not really important to the study. It rarely is. So none of the missing data stuff is going to go on your table. So you might want to jot that down. When you get ready to choose which percent to put in the table, use valid percent, because that is the percent that's only the valid responses, the valid cases you're going to look at. So you'll use valid percent and frequency. Now we have a couple of totals here inside this output. We have a total here, and a total here. Which one do I put in my table? Again, you're going to use the total right here for the valid cases. This total is kind of a subtotal of just the missing data. And then here at the bottom, you have the grand total. Well, again, we don't care about the missing data so much. We're not analyzing it. We really just want the total of the stuff we're going to analyze. So this 1,359 is what would go in our table. Okay, so that's kind of a very straightforward, simple way to start to get the pieces of information out of SPSS and into the table. Do you see why we're going to have this information presented this way rather than just dumping output out of SPSS? This is neater, cleaner, and much more succinct. It's a one-stop shop for all the relevant pieces of information that your reader is going to have. Okay, and you can stack variables in the same table. So right here you can see we actually have two variables represented in here, and they have these response choices and again number and percent. Now down below, this is a variable that is also ordinal, but there's a lot of categories inside here. It's kind of daunting. Notice again, these categories are indented slightly from the title of the variable. And you may have to kind of come up with a title that makes sense, but you're going to use shorthand. You don't want to be wordy in a table. Just be descriptive so people know what it is, but just a few words will do the trick. This is a template that's better for something that has a lot of categories to it. Okay. If you have this much information to present, I probably wouldn't stack variables together like this because it's going to take up a lot of space and be kind of a pain in the neck to format. So for variables that have kind of just a few amount of answer choices, this one will probably work well. If you have a lot of answer choices inside the variable, I would maybe just keep it to one table. Okay, you can stack them if you'd like. This last table is kind of a combination of the two. So here we have the control variables. They used gender, race, English speaking ability, household type, do you receive a school lunch? So again, same kinds of information, valid n of how many people are included, that's your total, percent and number. Now notice between each variable, there's a space. Kind of helps us separate things and makes it easier on the eyes to see that we're beginning a little section of a new variable. It is also acceptable to get rid of this valid n column and actually have a little subscript underneath the table that says n equals. You'll also find that format as well. But notice we also have these neat bars, okay? They kind of give the eyes a clear definition of the beginning and end of the table. This breaks it up from the text because these tables are going to be embedded inside your paper, so that way we know the beginning of one and the end of another. So essentially that's how you do nominal and ordinal variable tables. Let's look at interval now. So interval we kind of can play with a little bit. Let's go back into our data. And you have to kind of think about what is the most relevant information for your reader. Okay, so I'm going to look at a variable that's called education in years. Okay, so this is one you've worked with, I believe, before on a prior lab. If not, we maybe talked about it. Okay, so this one says highest year of school completed. So it's just how many years of school have you done. It's noted as EDUC. Okay, now you'll notice when I click on the values, it looks like there's nothing in there. Remember, for an interval variable, we don't label 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, and so forth. We don't do that because the number is exactly what the variable is talking about. So don't freak out when you see that. But this is a very typical example of a variable that maybe we'd want to include in a study. So I'm going to right click on this, ask for descriptive statistics. So here I'm actually provided with, whoops, where's my output? I'm provided with the mode, the range, the minimum, the maximum. Now notice I don't have the mean actually. I have to go get that. I also have a frequency from 0, numbering all the way to 20 of how many years of school have been completed for somebody. Okay, so we have some decisions to make. First of all, should I actually prepare this frequency table in a way similar to what I did with the nominal variables? Most of the time that's not necessary for an interval variable, but some people feel like it really helps the reader understand what they have to work with. So that's kind of your choice. It's not required, but if you feel like it will be helpful, you could actually prepare your variables that way. So what you would do inside your table template is you would list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and actually put the number and percent next to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and occasionally that is very helpful, but I'll leave that up to you. The usual information we prepare is the stuff we find in the table template for interval variables. So I'm going to minimize the nominal and ordinal one, open up the interval variable one, and zoom in a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so all of these variables inside this table are interval, meaning I can quantify them. They all have a mean. They all have a median, a mode, a standard deviation, and a minimum, a maximum. So this information is also descriptive. Okay, so this is percent religious attendance, firearm murders, robberies, and assaults per 100,000, percent of people in poverty, percent of people with a high school diploma or more, bachelor's degree. Here's the unemployment rate or unemployment percent. This one is income. This one is age. Number of state residents. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind that you'll notice in this table is it also provides some information on how it's measured. Personal income per capita in dollars. Number of state residents in thousands. Okay, you could also say, residents age 15 to 24 years old. So it tells us this is dollars, this is years, or this is a percent of something. This is the number of assaults per 100,000 people in the population. So make sure you're very descriptive on the information you're providing. But again, you're going to kind of bring this information across these columns and across the rows for each individual variable. Now this is several variables all kind of stacked together. You don't have to have nearly this many, but these are just variables that the student was using in their paper. Hopefully this makes sense to you. So again, you can provide kind of a listing of the frequency, but especially when you have a lot of rows of data that came out in the quantity, it may just be more useful to do this. So remember, if I want to get that famous mean, I can go to the Analyze menu, and again, you can navigate from your output, go to Frequencies, get your variable, go into Statistics, and you can ask for the mean, median, mode, the minimum and the maximum, and standard deviation. Those are the ones we use the most. Click Continue, and then click OK. So now we have all the stuff we need to populate into that table for an interval variable. Hopefully you found this helpful to start designing your tables and putting some really cool professional looking stuff in place. Again, if you have questions, please jot them down and feel free to contact me. Thanks.